Alright, welcome everybody. Welcome to TronCon Summer 2015. Hope you're all enjoying it so far. Happy birthday, Tron. That's today, 33 years old. Old program, still kicking. Anyway, so this is my panel. This is a user's guide to the multiverse, Tron in Kingdom Hearts. So, quick show in chat. How many of you are familiar with Kingdom Hearts? Or have played any of it before? Alright, that's one. I know at least one other. 2, 3. Okay, so the Kingdom Hearts story doesn't really matter a whole lot to the Tron level. All you really need to know is it's a pretty standard RPG formula. You play as player character, goes around to different worlds, doing various things. Usually it's following the plot of the movie it comes from pretty well. Kingdom Hearts is a sort of crossover between Final Fantasy and Disney, but you play as original characters and it's an original story. So, let's get started. So, Tron has actually made 2 appearances in the Kingdom Hearts series. The first appearance was in Kingdom Hearts 2 with the world Space Paranoids. As you can tell from the world icon, it's got the MCP tower, Solar Sailor, light cycles, recognizers. It's based on 1982 Tron, the original Tron. The second appearance was in Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance, which was the grid. This was based on Tron Legacy, which is the more recent one. I'm sure we've all seen both of these movies. So let's start with Space Paranoids, since this was the first appearance. Now, here's some artwork. As you can see, it's very much reminiscent of 1982 Tron. Lots of bright neon colors everywhere. Circuit lines just all over practically every surface. They absolutely nailed the look of 1982 Tron. There are so many little details that I honestly couldn't find good pictures of, but there's so many little details, like the pit cells are recreated, the little red dashes on the wall are in one area. Everything's, glowing. Some areas have a bit of a pulse to them. There's no recognizers, oddly enough, even though they're on the world icon. No recognizers actually appear in the world. But there is a Solar Sailor, there is a light cycle, and I'll be getting to that later. So character-wise, we have Tron, of course. How can you not have Tron? Played by Bruce Boxleitner. I don't think you can have Tron and have him not be played by Bruce Boxleitner. You have Commander Sark, who is played by, I can't remember the name of the actor, I'm sorry, but he does a very good job of it. He sounds just as much like the original Sark. And he also plays the big Master Control program everybody's been talking about. There he is, he's the big red tower. They don't show his smaller form, the form of him sitting in the chair. I'm not sure why. I think it just makes for a cleaner boss win to not have that extra 30 seconds in there, but that's my opinion, and it is a video game. And then you've got the player character. You have Sora, accompanied by Donald and Goofy. Now, their outfit, while it's still very much Tron, I actually kind of get a almost Tron 2.0 vibe from their outfit, now that I've actually played Tron 2.0 myself. They don't have the same hollow armor look that some 2.0 characters do. If you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about, where it looks like it's just armor without a body inside of it. But they're definitely more reminiscent of the 2.0 Tron look than the 1982 Tron. I think it may partially be due to the fact that these characters in their normal forms have a lot more accessories on their outfits. There's a lot more three-dimensional aspects to them. Whereas the 1982 Tron characters, as you can see on Tron and Sark, it's a pretty flat bodysuit with very little accessories. Tron has his gauntlets, boots, shoulder pads, same with Sark. But they're very flat in comparison to Sora, Donald, and Goofy. That may in part just be due to just how Sora, Donald, and Goofy look outside in the normal world. But it also may be a slight influence from Tron 2.0. Which actually was an influence, and I'll cover that in just a moment. So, as for the story of the world, you visit it twice. The first visit is mainly as a role in a larger storyline of Kingdom Hearts that I'm not going to get into because it's just going to be a bunch of names and things that you won't recognize as Tron fans. But it begins with you're locked in a pit cell, you break out, you go to a data space, you access a backup of Tron, which powers him up, gives him some new abilities in-game. Master Control Program wants to get into this data space. You had to get the program in the real world, then go inside and give it to Tron, which actually leads to a funny moment because Tron says, "Why did you come in here to give me the password? Why didn't you just, send it to me?" And of course, Sora, Donald, and Goofy, who have probably never seen computers in their lives before, just completely over their heads. Like, they just don't get it. It's actually pretty funny. But, I mean, they take it all in stride pretty well. So I was like, I don't understand this, but you seem like an alright guy. And then you've got Sark in the lower right there. He's talking to Master Control. They do that wireframe Master Control model. I didn't grab a picture of that because it's a tiny rectangular picture and it's just a wireframe. It looks exactly like it does in the movie. So that's the first visit. On the second visit, you go in again. You kind of more closely follow the original 1982 Tron storyline in that Master Control Program is causing trouble in the outside world, so you have to go in and take him out, basically. So, I have a picture later on, but I want to come back to the light cycle for a moment because this is really interesting. Now, this is the light cycle from Kingdom Hearts 2. This was used in a minigame and also, well, just a minigame, but you have to play the minigame once as part of the story. Now, something you may notice about it is that is not the 1982 Tron light cycle. It's got an open canopy. It's a lot closer to the ground. It's a lot longer. Those of you who have played, yeah, Cameron just said it in the chat. That looks more like a 2.0 light cycle, and yes, it absolutely does. There on the bottom, you can see the Tron 2.0 light cycle. It is almost an exact. It is practically an exact match for the Tron 2.0 light cycle. Now, but you may be wondering to yourself, why does this world in Kingdom Hearts, based on 1982 Tron, have a light cycle from Tron 2.0? And not only because it fits the minigame mechanics better, because you need an open canopy to do attacks, but, and this is, I had to go digging for this interview tidbit. I had to search across like 3 or 4 different sites because this is an interview from 2005 with the creator of Kingdom Hearts, the creative director, Tetsuya Nomura, with Dengeki Magazine, which is a Japanese magazine. And if you read this quote, during a trip to Disney, he actually saw someone working on a Tron game on his PC. Now, given the time frames of these two games, it's very likely that he saw someone working on Tron 2.0. Which is a very niche game, even within the Tron community, and Tron is already pretty niche. So, yeah, that's really cool that it's actually Tron 2.0 that inspired Tetsuya Nomura to include Tron in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. And that explains why the light cycle is basically a carbon copy of the Tron 2.0 light cycle. Because, and as to give you background on the time frames, Tron 2.0 released in late summer of 2003, and Kingdom Hearts 2 released just before holiday season 2005, and then released in early 2006 in North America. So yeah, that was a really cool tidbit about the light cycle. Like I said, I had to go digging for that interview because I knew I had read that somewhere, and it was just a matter of finding the actual quote. So, in the upper left here, there's a screenshot. That's from a cutscene on the Solar Sailor. I didn't grab a picture of the Solar Sailor. It looks exactly like it does in the original movie. But you can see in the background, that's the same Sea of Simulation, down to the floating orbs with the circuit lines on them. Even the 8-bit geometric clouds are up top. Like I said, they really nailed Tron 82 look. It is, like, perfect. They got every little detail right. In the lower right there, you can see a screenshot of the Master Control Program boss fight. Even the Master Control Program boss fight is taken straight out of the movie. The only way you can damage him is to do that reaction command using Tron's disc against the core of the Master Control Program. So they did a fantastic job. If you saw the link on my Tumblr post about this, you might have been listening to the background music so far. It's very much reminiscent of Tron, very much video gamey music, as even for video game music. I'll put a link in the description below on YouTube when I post this. So yeah. Now let's move on to Kingdom Hearts 3D's version of Tron, which is the Grid. Now this is based on Tron Legacy. And, although actually, to go back for a sec, something I forgot to mention about Space Paranoids, which is this world, is that, interestingly enough, this world could be considered canon within the Tron mythos. Because at the very beginning of this level, when you first visit, as Tron is explaining where you are, he says that this system was copied from one made by a corporation called Encom. So everything you do here is copied from the original Encom system, which means that all of this is technically canon in Tron, which is pretty cool. Alright, moving on for real this time. We've got Kingdom Hearts 3D, The Grid, which is based on Tron Legacy. Once again, there is a recognizer present in the world icon. Difference this time being that recognizers actually are present within the level. So you can see it's Tron City with the tower and End of Line Club as the main part of the icon. So characters here, we have Sora once again, who's our main character. As you can see, he's got a legacy look now. But it still feels like it's still Tron. And it's still kind of reminiscent of his Space Paranoids outfit. But it's a different color palette. It's a darker secondary color. You know, it's black now instead of that sort of gray, and it's that really light, almost white blue instead of the really dark blue. And he's got the helmet. Unlike before, when his facial features and hair were sort of colored out and in black and white, like the original Tron, now they're in color, like Tron Legacy. And this time, instead of Donald and Goofy, he has Riku, and they don't actually interact, but Riku goes to the grid too, and he is also in a Legacy-style suit. They both have helmets similar to the disc battle helmets that Sam wears during the games. And you can see even their weapons, the Keyblade, even that gets a Tron skin applied to it. And that is the same across. You can equip any of the Keyblades in the game, they will all get the Tron skin applied to them. Alright, characters here, we have Sam, Korra, and Flynn. So this one actually mirrors the Tron Legacy storyline much more than Space Paranoids mirrored the Tron 82 storyline, because, I mean, this is an exact copy of it almost, with a few slight event differences, but overall the same stuff happens. And then enemies, you got Clue. The Black Guard are present and actually serve as enemies that you encounter a couple times. And Rinzler. Prepare to have your hearts ripped out, because that's going to happen in 2 slides. Alright, so here's a couple cutscenes. In the top left, we can see Sora battling Rinzler, or rather Sora defending against Rinzler. Now, the important thing to remember here is that Sora met Tron before. He met Tron back during Kingdom Hearts 2, and so he remembers Tron. So when he finds out that Rinzler is Tron, which is not as big of a reveal in this game as it was in the movie, they explain it pretty early on that Tron and Rinzler are the same person, that Rinzler is just a repurposed form of Tron. So when Sora hears that, he's like, that's terrible, we gotta find a way to change him back. That's his first reaction. And so in Sora's version of the world, because of plot shenanigans, and the writers didn't want to have to worry about Sora and Riku ever interacting with each other, and worry about the time frames of that. Basically, what happens is when one character visits a world, it's almost like a separate iteration of the world from when the other character visits. So they can be in the same world at the same time, and it's like 2 copies of the world, or 2, almost like a mirror dimension or something. It's confusing. It's confusing Kingdom Hearts mechanics and plot stuff, and I'm not going to get into that because it's confusing. So anyway, Sora battling Rinsler up top there. Sora actually remembers Tron and does everything in his power to change him back into Tron. And that goes, yes, it is exactly like separate instances of a program running. So Sora fights Rinsler, tries to change him back to Tron. Unfortunately, he's unsuccessful. More on that in a minute. Bottom right there, you can see Riku once again. Light cycles make an appearance in this game. And once again, they are not quite the same as the source material. In the Kingdom Hearts 2 light cycle minigame, there are no light trails whatsoever, and it's basically like a motorcycle combat minigame with rock, paper, scissor types mechanics. Not very well received among the fandom, that minigame. I think the Kingdom Hearts 3D light cycle minigame did a much better job, but it's still not true light cycles, mostly because it's hard to make a legitimate mini game out of that, mostly because of just the nature of light cycle rules. But at least this time they did give a light ribbon behind the light cycle that you can use to damage enemies. It's just that they also gave you lasers on the front to damage enemies in front. But overall, they did a better job of the light cycles in Kingdom Hearts 3D than they did in Kingdom Hearts 2. Here we've got another cutscene screenshot. I wish I had more screenshots or even like a good artwork background image for this one, but because this game originally and currently is only released on the Nintendo 3DS, it's pretty difficult to get good screenshots of it, I think. So a lot of these screenshots are really just promotional images that were released before the game came out, just because it's hard to record off a 3DS. So here we've got Flynn, Sam, and Cora sitting in the light jet. They're just about to go up into it and head off to the portal, but Riku is there with them. So Riku and Sora are very much not quite passive observers, but they are very, very close to being passive observers. Basically, events in this world are going to play out the same regardless of how much they do or don't do. And really, it's just they tweak minor events. For instance, in, say, one person's version, Cora goes, or I think in Sora's version, Cora goes with him to infiltrate Clu's throne ship and try and find Tron's source code to change him back. In Riku's version, Cora gets captured by Rinsler as soon as they land on the Rectifier. So it's two different ways. Either way, Cora ends up in that throne ship and Rinsler's at the door. So that's what I mean when I say that it's very much plays out the same way regardless. Alright, ready to have your hearts broken? I hope you don't need them for the rest of the day, because here we go. This is what happens after you defeat the Rinsler boss fight as Sora. You use the Keyblade to basically begin to change him back. And it's actually a pretty interesting. I wish I had more cuts. Like I said, I wish I had more screenshots of the cutscene, because they actually do a pretty good job of it. They actually reuse some visuals from the Space Paranoids level in Kingdom Hearts 2. They use some graphics from a combination ability that Sora and Tron do. And Sora basically begins to change Rinsler back into Tron. And then Clu shows up. Clu basically comes in the arena and messes it up. He attacks Sora, and Tron jumps in front of him to deflect it with his own disc. But at this point, Rinsler is pretty weakened, so he just he deflects the disc, but he's kind of just kneeling on the ground. He's kind of dazed, can't really do anything. And then Clu just throws his disc overhand or whatever. He curves it, and then it hits the panel underneath him. That's why there's a hole in the ground there. And Rinsler just falls through. And Sora runs towards him to catch him, and Rinsler reaches out to grab Sora's hand, and they just graze each other's fingertips, and it is just absolutely heart-wrenching. I highly recommend you all go watch that scene. If you're at all interested in seeing these for yourself, absolutely go look it up. There's plenty of playthroughs and walkthroughs online that you can find. Like I said, the music's fantastic. They even reskin all the enemies to give, in Kingdom Hearts 2, they reskin the enemies with Tron lines, and it's really great. But Sora, this bit with Sora actually does something that even the Tron movies themselves never did, and it actually begins to pose the question of what measure is a program. Does a program count as a real being? Which is something the Tron movies have never even begun to consider. I think the closest they've come to that is maybe Korra, and that's just via her existence. They never actually talk about it in universe, like whether she counts as an actual person, as a complete form of sentient life. I mean, Flynn kind of does, but then there's still all the other programs. Do they count as life forms? And there's just so many questions that just not even go unanswered. There's questions that go unasked even in the Tron movies. But there's a scene right after saving Korra from Rinsler where Sora says that he's like, no, I can talk to him. Tron's still in there, and even Korra, who you'd think acknowledges the possibility of programs being life forms. Even Korra is the one who says he's a program. Programs don't have hearts. And Sora says, he's like, that's not true. The Tron I knew had something. And, you can go back and watch the Kingdom Hearts 2 Space Paranoids level, and Tron certainly did have something. And you can watch the movies, and Tron has something. He's not just lines of code. None of them are. But, that's the closest that any Tron appearance has really ever come to asking that question of, do programs count as life? Do they have hearts and minds and that sort of thing? And I think it's really, well, maybe not really interesting that Kingdom Hearts is the one to pose that question, but it's almost ironic that it's Kingdom Hearts that asks whether programs have a heart, because of course Kingdom Hearts is going to ask that question. It's in the title. So moving on. Yeah, that pretty much does it for me. I've rambled all I want to ramble about. I mean, there's not a whole lot to do. I'm not going to rehash the entire levels of the games. Although on the note of the grid level, I actually played it myself over the past, day and a half. And, again, they did a fantastic job of recreating the feel of the grid in Kingdom Hearts, just like they did with 1982 Tron and Space Paranoids. They absolutely nail it. There's, it's the exact same aesthetic. The Solar Sailor is in it, exactly the same, down to every little detail. Recognizers are in it that are almost exactly the same. My one nitpick with the recognizer is that they don't actually make them orange. They make them that Clue goldenrod color. But that's just me nitpicking about colors because, obviously colors are very important in Tron. They can tell you a lot about programs and users based on what colors they have. It's an immediate form of showing who's aligned who with what. It's color-coded for your convenience, basically. It's a trope. And so yeah, that's my one nitpick with the grid is that they made the recognizers yellow. But ultimately, yellow, orange, it's still aligned with Clue. So yeah, any questions? Because I'm all rambled out. I could keep rambling, but it will only become more rambly than it has been so far. Do I have more to ramble about? Maybe. I could come up with stuff. Let's talk about the entry to Space Paranoids, because that picture is up on the screen right now. So the way it happens in Kingdom Hearts 2 is you find the computer of a very important character whose research is likewise very important. And so you can see this is his computer, and Tron fans will recognize that screen immediately. Yes, it is Ansem the Wise. It is his computer. For those of you who've played Kingdom Hearts, you know who that is. For those who haven't and are just here to see how Tron is present in another franchise, it doesn't matter who he is. But anyway, this is his computer. He did a lot of important research. And you can see from that screenshot that it's the exact same screenshot that was in the original Tron, and it's I'm trying to multitask and I'm doing a terrible job of it. Yeah. Anyway, it's the same screenshot as on the laser bay, as in that you see in the laser bay in the original Tron. You can't tell great because of the poor resolution, but it's got the magnification, it's got scan mode. It says MCP in there somewhere, I think on the left side, and it's that laser readout screen. And so, like I said before, Sora, Donald, and Goofy, they don't know what a computer is. They barely know how to type. Sora types like chopstick style, just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Donald eventually jumps up on the keyboard, because it's Donald, of course he does. And he basically draws the ire of the Master Control Program. Master Control Program's like, hey, you're misusing this terminal. Any further misuse will result in defensive action. And so they, of course Donald takes one more step on the keyboard, because it's Donald, and they get lasered in by a massive laser behind them. But they actually get zapped in the same manner as Flynn in the original Tron. When they get hit, although they're not sitting in a chair, but they get hit and they get frozen in place, and there's the large squares, and then the laser just goes dit, 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 and digitizes them bit by bit. We've got some questions in the chat here. Quite a good question. Alright, here's a good one. Are Sora and Riku considered users in 3D? As a matter of fact, they are. Sam and Flynn actually acknowledge them as also being users when they're on the grid level. And I'm not entirely sure if there's more significance to be drawn out of that, but I think, they're users because if that world were not in the state it is in Kingdom Hearts 3D, I'm not going into it because, again, it's a lot of confusing Kingdom Hearts stuff. But they are considered users. Their circuitry is the same color as Flynn's and Sam's. If anything, it maybe is just tinged with a slight bit of blue, whereas Sam, Flynn, and Korra just have complete white circuits. What kind of Tron world is in Kingdom Hearts 3? Well, we actually don't know if Tron's going to be returning in Kingdom Hearts 3. I really hope it makes a return in Kingdom Hearts 3. I think it'd be really interesting to follow up on where the grid ended, follow up on where Space Paranoids ended, have Sora be able to meet Tron again, just because it feels like it's left unresolved. Depend on a third Tron movie. I actually don't think it would depend on a third Tron movie, because Kingdom Hearts 3 is already in development. It's been in development a year already. So I think that it's really dependent on whether or not Nomura and the rest of the developers decide to return to Tron once more. I really hope they do, like I said, because it feels like there's things left unresolved. I would love to see Tron return again. It's one of my favorite worlds in Kingdom Hearts 2 because it's one of my favorite franchises. I love the music, I love the look of it, I love that level entirely, and I would love to see it come back. Which do you like best, Space Paranoids or the Grid? I'm going to go with... I think I'm going to go with Space Paranoids because my first experience actually playing Kingdom Hearts 3D only started like a week ago, maybe, because I just got it earlier this summer and I started it a couple weeks ago in order to prepare for this. But, I've played Kingdom Hearts since the beginning. I remember playing Kingdom Hearts 2 the first time back in 2005, or 2006 rather. And so, yeah, my nostalgia and my fond memories of that game are making me say Space Paranoids, but at the end of the day, even if I were to objectively look at it, Space Paranoids is still my favorite, It's still that 1982 Tron aesthetic that they perfectly nail. It's still got fantastic music. I love the look of the characters when they enter it. Even the enemies get Tron lines, which they actually don't do much in Kingdom Hearts 3D. A couple of the enemies have Tron lines, but that's because those are already a naturally occurring part of their design. So that was something that kind of bugged me, was that the enemies and your also companions don't get that Tron aesthetic applied to them. That kind of annoyed me, because then it made them look really out of place. So yeah, Space Paranoids is my favorite. Are Sora and Tron still friends? I'd say so. I'd say Sora and Tron are still friends. But again, the Tron he knew in Kingdom Hearts 2, yeah, that's his friend. The Tron/Rinsler he met in 3D, I think Sora still considers that his friend. Because Sora is one of those people who is just always optimistic about things. He never can have a grudge. He's tried having a grudge, and even then it softens up a little. I mean, he feels bad for Maleficent at 2 points in Kingdom Hearts 2, Sora is just a really forgiving guy. So, but again, I'd love to see Tron return in Kingdom Hearts 3. I'd love to see him be able to interact with Rinsler and possibly Tron again. What language are the programs in Tron written in? I honestly have no idea. It depends on what programming languages were used in 1981, 1982. How many lines of code does it take to make a heart? Incalculable. And I think that is actually the direct answer from Kingdom Hearts. The process of encoding hearts is incalculable. On that note, that actually reminds me of something, is that the digitizing laser used to enter the Tron world actually does see a couple other uses in the Kingdom Hearts universe. It's not exactly the same technology, I don't think, because it doesn't enter into... It was written in Pytron. Okay, I know who you are now. Thanks for giving yourself away there. Anyway, the digitizing laser does get reused in Kingdom Hearts. The digitizing laser does get reused. It's used in kind of like a Matrix situation at one point. It's used to put characters into a simulated version of a world. And, it's not quite the same as the Tron laser, I don't think. It's almost like a horizontal movement of that technology, because it doesn't put you directly into the computer. It puts you into a simulation that the computer is running. And then later on, at the very end of Kingdom Hearts 2, it's used to attempt to digitize a whole lot of hearts. And, well, like I said, the process of encoding hearts is incalculable, like the character himself says, and so that machine ends up exploding in his face. But he lived. He just lost all his memories again. So anyway, does anyone else have any questions or bad puns? Alright, well, I think that about does it for me. Thank you all for joining. This has been really interesting for me. This is my first year attending TronCon, and this is actually my first time running a panel of any kind. The one thing I noticed on it was that Tron was ticklish. Yes, Tron is indeed ticklish at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2. That's a funny scene. So yeah, I mean, definitely. Oh, Yori must have had a lot of fun with that. Yori fans are gonna hate this. Yori does not appear in Kingdom Hearts. I'm sorry to say, Yori does not appear in Space Paranoids. I don't understand why she wouldn't have gotten copied over with the entire rest of the NCOM system. I mean, she helps run the Solar Sailor, so I don't know. They just didn't feel like putting her in the game, I guess. She was busy being the laser program? Sure, let's go with that. Let's go with that, because that explains why she's not present.